Good morning, everyone. My name is Soona Samsami, and I'm representative of U.S. Representative National Council of Resistance of Iran. Welcome to our press conference today. Today, we want to disclose precise details of an act of war by the religious fascism ruling Iran against the oil facilities of Saudi Arabia on September 14, 2019. Based on intelligence obtained by the People's Mojahedin Organization of Iran, MEK, PMOI, from inside the Iranian regime, the decision for this attack was taken in the Supreme National Security Council, SNSC, that is presided over by the regime's president, Hassan Rouhani. The regime's foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, is also a regular member of the SNSC and attends its sessions. A number of serious commanders of the IRGC participated in this meeting. The Operations Tactical Command Headquarters, led by the IRGC, Brigadier General Mohammad Fallah, deployed to Omidyeh Base in southern Khuzestan province a week prior to the attack. A group of the IRGC commanders and personnel with expertise in missiles and drones were transferred from a base in Mahshar to the Omidyeh base to participate in this operation. My colleague, Mr. Jafarzadeh, will provide details of these decisions and respond to your questions. But meanwhile, I'd like to address a few points very shortly. The theocracy ruling Iran has entered into its final phase of demise and has no strategic exit from an inevitable downfall. The regime tries to prop itself up and prevent a popular uprising by using internal suppression and external sponsorship of terrorism against its opposition. Regime seeks to contain the deep-seated anger of the Iranian people and society at its disastrous and inhuman rule. They seek to blackmail the international community into inaction and retreat with their warmongering aggression. If this regime stops its sponsorship of terrorism and its export of Islamic fundamentalism and sectarianism, it will implode. Khamenei and regime heads stress that if we don't fight in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, then we will have to fight in the streets of Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz. This regime is counting on inaction of international community in its aggression. The regime has paid no price for what it has brought upon the region. In 2003, the gates of Iraq were thrown open for it, and it proceeded with a silent occupation of Iraq and created a springboard for its action across the Middle East region. Our intelligence shows that the regime calculus is it will not pay a heavy price for all its aggression up to the US presidential elections in 2020. When the regime attack on oil tankers and oil facilities, and then downing of an American drone, and then its increase in uranium enrichment and the spinning of IR-5 and IR-6 centrifuges, it did not receive any appropriate response. The regime became even more emboldened and embarked on a blatant act of war on Saudi Arabia. I will close my remarks with a quote which Mrs. Maryam Rajavi said, the president-elect of NCRI. I quote, "The attack on a neighboring country's oil installations is a major step and a new phase in the warmongering aggressions of the religious dictatorship ruling Iran. Exerting power and decisiveness is the only language the mullahs understand. Inaction only emboldens this medieval regime whose primary victims are the Iranian people. The ultimate solution to rid the world of Iran's ruling religious fascism as the source of all crisis in the region, the change of this illegitimate regime by the Iranian people and their organized resistance, National Council of Resistance of Iran and the PMOI Mojahedin." End of quote. Mr. Jafarzadeh, please join us and continue on the detail of this revelation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alireza Jafarzadeh. I'm the Deputy Director of the U.S. Representative Office of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. And I would like to provide further details about the September 14th drone and missile attack by the Iranian regime against the Saudi oil installations. As my colleague Ms. Samsami mentioned earlier, the decision was made by the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, and all of the top leadership of the regime, including top commanders of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, were involved in the planning and implementing this operation on that day, and I'm going to provide further details about that. Now, in terms of the source, the information that we're revealing today comes from the network inside Iran of the People's Mojahedin Organization of Iran, which is the pivotal resistance movement inside the country, part of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. And they have obtained this information from their own sources within the regime, including within the IRGC. Now, once the Supreme Leader Khamenei made the decision to make such an attack on the Saudi oil installations, the session of the Supreme National Security Council was met and to discuss this issue, and the final decision was made in the July 31, 2019 session of the Supreme National Security Council, which is the highest decision-making body of the Iran regime on anything, particularly the security matters. And this is where this issue was discussed. And what's important is that Supreme National Security Council meetings are presided over by the regime's president, Hassan Rouhani. Mohammad Javad Zarif is a regular member of the Supreme National Security Council, and he regularly attends these meetings. Now, also present in the meeting were a number of the IRGC commanders who attended there. Now, IRGC Major General Ghulam Ali Rashid, you want to remember his name. He has not been as well known as others, you know, like you, everybody knows Qasem Soleimani, but not many people know about Ghulam Ali Rashid. And his role could actually be even more important than everything else that other commanders are doing. He is the commander of the central headquarters of Khatam base, Khatam headquarters. This Khatam is actually operational military headquarters in Iran, which is in charge of all of the coordination of any kind of military operations that the Iran regime does whether it's the IRGC, whether it's the regular armed forces, they all come under the command of the Khatam headquarters. You recall 3 years ago, in 2016, Hassan Firuzabadi, who was the chief of staff of all of the armed forces of the Iran regime, after 27 years, he was replaced by another General Bagheri, and then his deputy, who was at the time Ghulam Ali Rashid, became the head of Khatam headquarters. Basically, he is directly reporting to the Supreme Leader Khamenei, and all of the activities, especially in wartime, in crisis situation, every activity that any military force in the regime does comes under the command of Ghulam Ali Rashid. So he's a very, very senior member of the IRGC, and he was the one who attended that meeting of the Supreme National Security Council on July 31, 2019. Also present in that meeting were the IRGC Brigadier General Hossein Salami, who is now the Commander-in-Chief of the IRGC. After Aziz Jafari, he replaced him, and Qasem Soleimani, who is the commander of the Quds Force. In addition to these two, were other commanders present were General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, who is the commander of the Aerospace Force of the IRGC. IRGC has 4 forces. One of them is Aerospace Force, and all of the activities related to missiles, the Air Force of the IRGC, the drones, and all of those activities come under his command. Now, both Rashid and Hajizadeh are not regular members of the Supreme National Security Council, so they were called upon to this meeting because of their specific mission, which was attacking Saudi Arabia. So these are the 4 commanders of the IRGC who were present in that meeting. There were other commanders as well, but these are the 4 that we have been able to identify. We do know that there were other members of the IRGC and the military present, including the state security forces present there. Now, after the order was given by Khamenei, the issue was discussed at the Supreme National Security Council on July 31, 2019. Then Khamenei, when he did the initial approval of the operation, once he got the report from the Supreme National Security Council, and then they started planning the details of the plan. The plan was referred to, once it was designed, to Khamenei again for final approval. And then Khamenei ordered the IRGC Brigadier General Rashid and Brigadier General Hajizadeh to actually begin the operational implementation of the plan. So that's the process that it takes. Now, after that, the Brigadier General Mahmoud Fallah, who was the deputy to IRGC Aerospace Commander, he's the deputy to Hajizadeh. He was actually deployed to down south because he was in charge of actual implementation of the operation on the ground. So this is the place of the headquarters of the Aerospace Force in Tehran. This is Tehran, and this is the Chitgar Lake, Chitgar area, also known as Chitgar area in Tehran. As you can see, northwest of Tehran. This is where the base of the Aerospace Force, known as Dastwar Garrison, is located. This is a closer image of that. This is the Dastwar Garrison next to the Chitgar Lake. This was where they worked all of the details of the plan. And now, The Ghulam Ali Rashid, after he reviewed the final operations, the commanders of the Aerospace Force were deployed from Tehran to Khuzestan, the south province of Khuzestan, which is oil-rich in southwest of Iran. They were deployed on September 7th, a week prior to the attack. So after they did all of the planning and everything in Dasbara garrison, a number of commanders were deployed to Khuzestan. Now, these are the commanders that we know were deployed. First is Brigadier General, the IRGC Brigadier General Mohammad Fallah. He is the operational deputy commander of the IRGC Aerospace Force. And then IRGC Brigadier General Mahmoud Bagheri Kazemabad. He's the commander of the IRGC Aerospace Force for missiles. As I said, under Aerospace Force, there are different sections. One of them is missiles. And he's the commander of that. He was deployed to south to Khuzestan. And also Brigadier General Saeed Aghajani, who is the commander of Aerospace Force for drones, the drone forces. So these are the two kinds of weapons that were used in attacking the Saudi oil installations. So let's take a quick look. Supreme Leader Khamenei makes the decisions, orders it. It's discussed at the Supreme National Security Council, presided over by Rouhani and other commanders. And then the head of Khatam Garrison, Major General Ghulam Ali Rashid, is given the task along with Hajizadeh, and then the two deputies of the Aerospace Force Commander Hajizadeh, namely Mahmoud Bagheri Kazemabad and Saeed Alijani, respectively in charge of missiles and drone operations, are involved in that. Now, when they go to Khuzestan, to give you an idea, this is the Khuzestan's province right here. This is Ahvaz down south. This is Saudi Arabia. And the base that actually they got located is called Omidyeh. This is Ahvaz again on the satellite imagery. You can see here. This is Omidyeh. It's a small town, but it also has a military base that is located just north west of it. And this is a closer look of Omidyeh garrison, Omidyeh base right here. This is where the forces were deployed at Omidyeh. That's about 85 kilometers southeast of Ahvaz. Now, what's the significance of Omidyeh base? The significance is that it was previously the regular Air Force's 5th Interceptor base. It dates back to the time of the Iran-Iraq War. And the regular armed forces, Southwestern Air Defense, are actually situated in Omidyeh. And units of the regular Army, Air Defense, and Air Force are actually stationed in the base. It's not an IRGC base, so that gives them a good cover. It is used as a tactical operation base for the attack on the oil installations by the IRGC. And so a section of this base was used by the IRGC Aerospace Force, commanded by IRGC Commander Amiri. And as I said, the presence of the regular Army forces there just gives them a good cover to conceal their operations, and so no one would focus on this base. Now, what's interesting is that another group of IRGC commanders, after they were deployed on September 7th, the IRGC commanders were deployed to Omidyeh on September 7th, another group of IRGC commanders and personnel who had expertise in missile and drones were transferred from another IRGC base. It's the 3rd Naval Region in Mahshar. It's 119 kilometers south of Ahvaz, to the Omidyeh base to participate in this operation. Now, after the attack on the Saudi oil installation, a few days after that, the commanders, the operational commanders reported in detail all of their activities to Ghulam Ali Rashid, the IRGC commander, and the group of personnel who were transferred from Mashhad to Omidyeh for the operation, they returned to their base in Mashhad a few days after the operation. However, some of these personnel still remain in Omidyeh base. This is not where they're supposed to be, but they're still now in Omidyeh base. Now, in addition to that, based on the latest report we have received from inside Iran, a new squad from the IRGC Aerospace Force from Tehran has entered Omidyeh base on Sunday, September 22nd, 2019, just last week. We have no information on their orders yet, but we're watching the situation. Now, in terms of the missiles used in the attack, the IRGC, as we all know, has a unit that deals with production of cruise missiles, and they were produced by the cruise industries group named Thamen-ol A'emeh Industries, situated in Parchin, Tehran. And those factories that are operating under this group are Fasihi Industries, Moslemi Industries, and Rahimi Industries. And they also have a research facility in that production. Just to give you a better picture of what we're talking about, this is the Aerospace Industries Organization that is part of the defense of the Iran regime. And here is the Cruise Industries Group, known as Thamen. And this is Fasihi Industries, Moslemi Industries, Rahimi Industries, and then the research section. That's where the missiles were produced. They were produced at Parchin. We've talked about Parchin on so many different occasions, on the nuclear program of the Iran regime, on the missile program of the Iran regime. We had several press conferences about different parts of Parchin. Parchin is a very large military base near Tehran, in the suburb of Tehran, dating back to the time of the Shah. And it has 12 different sections, what they call 12 plans. And each plan deals with a different aspect of the activities, military activities of the Iran regime, including their nuclear weapons program. Now, the cruise missile that was used, that the regime wrongly describes it as Ya Ali, because, you know, named after the first Shia Imam Ali, but people of Iran call it anti-Ali missile. They were used in the Saudi Arabia. They were produced actually in Plan 4 of Parchin. This is where Plan 4 of Parchin is, in the central part of the Parchin military complex. Now, let's take a look at the missile centers in southern Iran. Overall, there are 42 missile centers for the Iran regime in the country, all over the country, and some of them are involved in the production, some are involved in the deployment of those missiles. Just take a look at the southern part of it. There are some 17 missile centers here that we have discussed in details. I don't want to take much of time here, but the information that you have with you has more details about each of these various units, including the ones that have tunnels in them. And so to wrap up about this missile attack, the simultaneous missile and drone attack on the Saudi oil installations on September 14th was clearly a blatant act of war, as my colleague Ms. Samsami mentioned earlier. The reason they got involved in this is because they're so desperate in exporting their crisis beyond the Iranian borders. They're so concerned about the popular uprisings in Iran. And the reason they're doing it, and they just keep doing it, because they're counting on the inaction of the international community, thinking that there will be no significant reaction on the part of the international community. So this way they can manipulate and gain concessions from the West. That's why we feel the only way to really eliminate the threat of the Iran regime is what the Iranian people want, which is changing regime by the people of Iran and the organized resistance. Now, a number of concrete steps in conclusion that could be taken in this regard is basically the implementing the previous UN Security Council resolutions. There are half a dozen of them that they need to be implemented back that deals with the bar the Iran regime from any kind of uranium enrichment or their missile activities. And all of the IRGC forces, their proxies from Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Yemen need to be expelled. And they also need to look at the human rights situation inside the country and refer the human rights dossier of the Iran regime, particularly regarding the 1988 massacre of as many as 30,000 political prisoners, mostly members of the MEK, to refer to the International Tribunal, and recognizing the rights of the people of Iran to overthrow this regime. So that concludes our presentation, and we're more than happy to take questions and respond to your questions.